Hi everybody in the CEO membership. I'm really glad you're here again this week. We're going to talk more about stress. It was just an overview last week because there's so much information that I wanted to make sure that we just get our minds right about stress and how important stress is and how harmful stress is, chronic stress is, to our long-term health. So some things we're going to talk about is the action point that we are using for this month, that I'm giving you for this month. And then I'm going to tell you what that action point is, and then we're going to go over why it's so important. So last week we talked about the sympathetic nervous system, which is the more stressful nervous system, the fight or flight nervous system, when cortisol is up and blood sugar goes up and heart rate goes up and the kidneys and the colon want to empty. And that can be good short term, especially if we need to, run or fight. And it can be very beneficial to push that sympathetic nervous system sometimes with things like hard exercise and those kind of things. But then we should come back down to a baseline. And what happens in America is we're so busy with so many different things, so many activities, so much work, so much stress, so many activities with families and kids, that a lot of times we get ourselves stuck, so to speak, in that sympathetic nervous system. And what we want to do is live most of our life in the parasympathetic or the rest and digest nervous system and not in the fight or flight nervous system. So we're going to talk about a really easy action point today. I mean, it's really simple and it only takes a minute or two that is proven to take our bodies, if we're stressed and in that sympathetic nervous system, that fight or flight, back down into the parasympathetic rest and digest nervous system. So that way the body can then normalize the blood pressure, normalize the heart rate, normalize the blood sugar, normalize the kidney and colon function, and we'll be back to where we need to be. So this is really important before meals, before bedtime. But what I'm going to encourage you to do, and what the action point this month is going to be, is to try to take a couple of minutes, at least twice a day, to do box breathing. And so I think that I mentioned this for just a second last week, but box breathing can really settle the nervous system back down into the rest and digest or parasympathetic nervous system. And box breathing is really easy. Just think of 4 sides on a box, right? So up, down, 4 sides. And we're going to do 5 seconds in. We're going to hold for 5 seconds, then we're going to breathe out slowly for 5 seconds, and then we're going to hold empty for 5 seconds. So you have about and you don't have to be exact. I mean, it doesn't have to be 5 seconds, but the goal is to kind of think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in, hold for 5, out for 5, breathing just nice and slow. If you can close your eyes and do it, even better. But it is proven that just a minute or two of that. So we just tell people, if you can do that for 2 minutes in the morning and in the evening, you can really start to train your body to go back from that sympathetic to the parasympathetic. Or if you've just, somebody's cut us off in traffic, or you had a really tough phone call, or you've gotten a fight with somebody at work, maybe not a fist fight, but, had words, and you're just upset, just take 2 minutes and do that box breathing. And it will start to take your body from fight or flight back down to rest and digest. And that's where, again, we want to live most of our life in rest and digest, but due to today's, lifestyles, we've kind of reversed that. And the reason that this is so important is that 75 to 90% of all doctor's visits in the United States are stress related. So stress can affect every system of our body negatively, again, when it's chronic stress. So we have things like ulcers, stomach ulcers can come on from chronic stress. High blood pressure, high heart rates or heart palpitations can be due to stress. Kidney issues can be due to stress. Nervous issues, right? Anxiety and nerves, obviously when your heart rate's up and your blood pressure's up and you're ready to fight, all these body systems are on high alert. And again, long term, that can cause the organs to have problems. That system of fight or flight also raises blood sugar levels because, again, we're ready for a lot of energy expenditure if we're going to have to fight the bear or the tiger. And so that high blood sugar then can lead to high insulin levels. And as you know, my number one hormone that we need to control, and I think the most important blood marker that any of you can have on my blood panel, if you haven't had my blood panel, is insulin levels. So we need to start to also consider what stress does to our health as far as our weight, as far as our addictive kind of attitudes, because the more stressed we are and the more we're in fight or flight, the more likely people are to eat, stress eat. They'll eat bad things typically, ice cream, potato chips, whatever your kind of go-to that will relieve or you think will relieve that stress. So people will then take this stuff and eat poorly, make poor choices because of the stress. It leads to lack of sleep, which creates more need and drives our hormones. It drives our ghrelin to say, hey, you need to eat more, and that can lead to more stressful eating and more insulin and sugar levels that are out of control. So when we interfere with our sleep, then with our stress, then we're affecting all our other hormones, our sex hormones, and all these other things are downstream. So it's really important that we think about that. The other thing that can come with too much stress or with chronic stress is addictions to things that are much worse than food, like alcohol, like other drugs, marijuana, other drugs can be used to try to dampen that stress. We have really so many people today on all these anti-anxiety and antipsychotic and all these drugs for these things, and a lot of it is just trying to cope with the stress. A lot of people say, well, I have to have a glass of wine every night, or 2 glasses of wine, or 2 beers every night, just to be able to unwind and go to sleep. And listen, we'll talk about it in more detail, and I already have really in the sleep class, but nothing interferes with our sleep. Nothing interferes with our sleep like alcohol. It is the number one thing to interfere with sleep. So I know we use it as a sedative sometimes, but it's really not. It may knock us out, but we're not really getting that restorative sleep. So being able to control the stress with something as simple as a couple of minutes of box breathing, is really a great trade-off. And it really and truly only takes a couple of minutes, morning and evening. There are other things you can do. You don't have to box breathe. One of the things I talked about, rest and digest, when we get out of that sympathetic nervous system and into parasympathetic, that prepares our body to be able to digest our food. And so we can think of doing a prayer, right? Being thankful for our food. That can turn down that sympathetic nervous system and turn on the parasympathetic nervous system. You can meditate. You can go for a nice, easy walk. You could go for a nice swim or something. Something that you enjoy out in nature. Take your dog for a walk, take your child for a walk, take your spouse for a walk. Just something where you can get away from the hustle and bustle or whatever has you upset. So it doesn't have to be box breathing, but that's the easy thing. You can do it driving down the road. Now, don't close your eyes if you're driving, right? But I'm just kidding, of course. But yeah, keep your eyes open when you're driving. So we can do it when we're driving. We can do it when we're at work. We can do it sitting at a desk. We can do it standing at the pharmacy counter. Just take some time. We can pray. We can meditate. We can, there's lots of ways to try to reduce it, but we have to be intentional about it. And that's the action point, is be intentional about trying to slow or switch your nervous system, slow your heart rate, slow everything down from sympathetic to parasympathetic at least a couple of times a day. Nothing wrong with doing it more if you're in a high-stress environment, a high-stress job. Just turn the phone on silent for just a couple of minutes, do your breathing, whatever you have to do. It's really important, y'all, because stress is probably the number one thing. If you look at the research and you really dig into it, it's the number one thing that ages us and causes the most likelihood of major events like heart attacks and strokes and, all these things. Stress can lead to more cancers. I mean, it really has a negative effect on us. And I live in a busy, stressful world, so I get it. I'm not preaching to you. I'm just trying to get you to understand how important it is to try to just learn how to relax, learn how to switch your body over. And you'll know when you can get your heart rate down, get your respiration rate down, your breathing rates down, and you feel so much more clear-headed. Your memory is better, your recall will be better, everything will improve. So we're going to continue on this theme next week, but I really want you to start to think about doing that couple of minutes in the morning, couple of minutes in the evening, and if you have time during the middle of the day, a couple of minutes there of this box breathing or something equivalent to just calm the system down. So I'm a very, high energy type A person. Really hard for me to take my own advice sometime, but I really do try to just relax. Maybe maybe my kids would call it just chill for a couple minutes here and there. So hopefully this has been helpful. As always, please share this with your friends and your family. We would love to have more and more members for our weekly videos, more and more members for our monthly live videos with questions. And as always, we thank you. And next week, we're going to talk about some supplements and other ideas to really help to put us in that calmer state more often. So, see you next week.